Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Broscast. I think we're on episode 4. I am what's known in the business as groggy. I went to bed at 3 a.m.
Oh boy.
And it is 8 a.m. 8:30 a.m.
Yeah, the morning podcasts aren't necessarily the best for you then. Was that work or was that just...
No, actually, because now I have all the early shifts, so I actually have no good reason for that, other than, actually, it's on my list of things to talk about. Fuck, it's hot in this room. Give me a sec.
Yeah, for anyone just listening, we're actually just doing this via Skype. So, you actually have your own heating in your room, right? That's why you're melting?
Yeah, it is an extraordinary, the room or the whole apartment that I'm living in is amazing at insulation. Like, unbelievably good for how old the building is, too. So, I turn the heating in my room it's just like a big old space heater, I guess you could call it. But it's a tiny space, and it's a really well insulated room, so you turn on the heat for a second, and it just floods the room.
Well, the thing I think is hilarious about it is that for no reason you have a vent that just empties into the other people's part of the apartment.
Yes.
So whatever you decide your room is going to be, everyone else has to deal with.
Yeah, that's really weird too, eh? Because I had mentioned that, I was talking to my roommate about how I didn't have a lock on my door, and she says, okay, just make sure that I get a key. And I was like, what?
What?
She's like, yeah. She's like, yeah, because your heater heats up the common room. So like so if I turn on the heat and leave for like an 8-hour shift, she's just forced to have the heat blowing into the whole apartment.
So, bro, I bet her old roommates did that all the time.
Yeah, actually. Yeah.
That's the worst thing about having just one singular roommate is that you both kind of have a half stake, even though it's actually her place. So
yeah.
You have to deal with this other person, and there's no one else to talk to.
Absolutely. All right. Oh, I got sidetracked already. So the reason that I was up so late last night, let me just make sure my pop filter is got enough distance here. I've been playing a new game, and it's not new. It's technically just new on the PC, but it's called Helldivers, and it's made by Arrowhead Studios. The same group behind Magicka and the new Gauntlet game, the one that we played.
I was gonna say I recognize Arrowhead, I just don't know where.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna tell you anything about this game because I really want us to play it together. So when you're hopefully when you're up, there'll be a day where you can come over to play, because it's so much fun. And I'm hopefully, if I have the energy today, I'm gonna make a video about it, because they do so much that is just so fucking good. Like, there's very, very few parts about this game that I would do anything about, like, that I would change. It's just they thought it all through. They thought almost every aspect of gameplay through, and how people would try to abuse it and how to counter it. Are you familiar with, what is it called?
Well, I couldn't tell you.
This is already just a riveting podcast. Dominant strategy.
Well, I know what the words mean, but
yeah, it's a lot. It's pretty much what it sounds like. So if you're playing any game, whether it's a board game or a video game, if you have 2 options, fuck off. Sorry, my computer's just asking me if I want to change to the Windows Basic theme. I'm not doing anything with my computer. I have no idea why it's even trying to do that. But anyway,
because you're basic.
Thank you. Oh shit. All right.
What, does your
Yeah.
audio go down?
No. No, I just turned away from the microphone to do that. Like it was like a person yelling in the background. Anyway. Just silence.
I think you're in the middle of something.
Yes. Dominant strategy. If you have two options in a game, if a player has two options with the same cost and one has a better payout, they're always going to choose the better payout. And there are a lot of game companies that just hope that people want to use the other one because it's cool, I guess. But with Helldivers, they chose when it's something that's really good, it's more difficult to use, and something that is not as good is easy to use, and they've balanced the whole fucking thing out, and it's hilarious, and it's a wonderful game.
That actually kind of reminds me of the way Borderlands does things, because I just started playing again this morning, hooked up the old Xbox 360, getting into that ancient technology, you know. And in Borderlands, the sniper rifles are so hard to use, just because of how, well, you can't no-scope in Borderlands. So the really high damage weapons and revolvers too are just like that much harder to hit people with.
I actually just started up again for a bit. It's not quite a perfect. It's not a very good port for the PC, but it was. I played as the soldier, and I forgot that he gets this like sniper rifle pistol at the start. It's pretty cool.
What do you mean? Like, he just starts off... Why does he start with a pistol? He should start with his shotgun.
He starts with an automatic rifle and a pistol with a scope.
Such bullshit. I actually... Well, that might be the port version, because I actually only started with one weapon.
Oh.
Yeah, now stuff's starting to get blurred.
Who were you playing as?
Mordecai, the sniper. It's always been my favorite.
Mordecai. Oh, Mordecai is a band. Check him out.
Mordecai, I'm pretty sure, is a person's name for many years.
Yes.
It's like Billy Talent. Mordecai! Mordecai the band. Although, you know me, instead of new games, I've been getting back into old games.
Me too.
Started playing a lot more League.
Oh, yes.
League of Legends, for anyone who doesn't know.
I was just watching, I was just watching Lolin, our old League of Legends show.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, you're right.
That's going a ways back.
So nowadays, I've been working really hard on the output quality of the show. I really care about the microphone quality and the game recording quality and the thumbnails and all that stuff. And right now, the only thing we have to work on is your microphone quality, just because you're not using a microphone that's as good as mine. So when you have them compared right next to each other, it's very obvious. But that's the only thing that we need to work on. In Lolin, you had a better microphone by far and a better setup.
Yeah, it wasn't good, though, by any stretch. Mine just, I happened to have... What was it? I don't even remember what microphone I would have been using.
I have no idea, but it's actually pretty decent, especially when you compare it to what I was doing. I don't know what the fuck I was doing. I don't know why I didn't care at all about audio quality at the time.
Well, that was back in the day when your computer would just savage any audio that was recorded in the same room.
That's true. Funny enough, though, it's the same computer. Like, nothing's changed.
I think your awareness of how much of an effect it has, and also the methods of... Well, anyone who's seen our Shank episodes knows all about the foam over the clacking buttons. So we've just become more conscious of how bad small things in audio end up being. And the more you listen to podcasts, the more you notice that.
Oh, boy. I've been watching a lot of Joe recently. And Smodcast. And, sorry, every fucking session we have... Shit.
What is... Was that a drum?
No.
Yeah, it actually sounded like you dropped a snare drum.
Alright. Every session, I managed to not have my phone charged. Okay. But yeah, I've been listening to a lot of Joe. And there's a lot of people that get right close up on the mic, a little too close, and you can hear all their weird mouth sounds. But then you got people like Joey Diaz, who likes to tell stories like this, and he's like, and then, and I'm like, what are you saying, Joey? And the next
communicate, Joey.
Yeah, and the next second he's like, you motherfucker!
Yeah, Joey Diaz is very two-toned.
I love him. He's one of my favorite guests on the show, and yet every single time I've heard him on the show, he does that whispering thing, and it's amazing that I can like somebody so much that I deal with that kind of stuff. Because just the other day I was listening to Edumacation, one of the Smodcast podcasts, and Kevin just starts eating chips on the podcast, and I just stopped. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I would have stopped too. That's really bad quality, just in general.
Yeah.
Even if he was eating chips out of a bowl, it would have sucked.
Oh yeah, and it was like.
Oh God! Like, how does a person who he's talking to not be? It's like I wouldn't be okay with him eating, like, just mucking chips during an intense conversation.
It's not an intense conversation, first of all.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very funny, silly, stupid thing. It's actually a great show. So Edumacation is a show where his buddy Andrew McElfresh, who used to be a writer for, I believe it was Jay Leno, he started on the podcast when he was still working for Jay Leno, and then Jay's show ended, and then Andy was like, wow, Kevin, thanks for giving me a job.
Yeah. I'm gonna have it whether you're giving it or not.
Yeah. And so he's really funny, he's really well read, and he brings just information to the podcast, and then Kevin smokes a shit ton of weed, and then he just interrupts constantly and just makes hilarious jokes about the stuff that he brings up. I love it. It's one of my favorite podcasts, actually.
Yeah, I hear you talk about it a lot. I just really don't have the time, just with how long podcasts are.
It has a structure, which is not a lot of podcasts do. Although I guess I don't really know that many podcasts. But in theirs, they have the psi, the phi, the y, and the bi. So I don't really pay attention to the sections, because the two of them are so good at what they do and so consistent that every section feels the same. But one of them has Andy saying things that are they sound true or could be true, and then Kevin has to answer whether what he said was correct or not.
That's hilarious.
And then they have also one where I think it's the Y, and then Kevin Andrew asks Kevin about, like, people calling with questions like, why does this happen to my body? And then Kevin has to answer.
With absolutely no knowledge.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. And sometimes he's right. Sometimes it's, like, weird how he's right.
He just, like, happened to guess, or he just is kind of a smart dude?
Well, Kevin would probably always call himself not a smart guy. He's really, that's his whole shtick, is that he's played himself down constantly. He calls himself a stupid fat piece of shit on a regular basis.
It's funny, because I hear Joe Rogan call himself a meathead. Like, you know, a lot of people say that, and, you know, he's also just sort of, he is a huge dude. But what did you say he calls himself?
A fat piece of shit.
That's actually so aggressive.
Yeah, it's a fucking fantastic show, and it's one of the podcasts that has created a movie on top of it. So right now, I believe the first movie they ever made based on a podcast was called Tusk, and I watched it. It's fucked up. It's really fucked up.
Yeah, you described it to me, and it sounded like some Human Centipede type shit. I wasn't really...
Yeah, very close. It was very close. So Kevin comes on the show. This is on Smodcast, and he says, I have an actual Kijiji ad. For people who don't know, Kijiji is basically Craigslist, but it's only in Canada. Which is why I was like, Kijiji? Because he lives in the States. Like, what's he doing on Kijiji? So he finds an actual posting saying, I am a billionaire who has had many travels, many thing in my life, and I don't really need anything, but comfort is something that I lack in my life because I have very few friends in my travels. But one friend I made was a walrus while I was shipwrecked for 8 months. And what he's offering is room and board in his mansion, free. The only thing you have to do is 3 days a month. You have to put on a very realistic walrus suit that he created and act like a walrus and never talk like a human for 3 days.
A month. Is that 3 consecutive days?
Consecutive, yeah.
See, I think that is why he's on Kijiji.
Yeah.
He probably was all over Craigslist and he thought, even though Americans are messed up, Americans are usually the pretty standard American messed up. In Canada, we do have some pretty strange folks.
Yeah, for sure. We, well, it's in, I believe he was from Nova Scotia, or so, like, pretty far east. So Kevin is he's just laughing so hard at this. He's finding it just hilarious. And then he says, for the first time in a while, dude, I had to write this. I just thought, what if instead of putting him in a walrus suit, he made him into a walrus? And that's the whole movie of Tusk. Justin Long. Justin Long, my bad. Who's Jason Long?
Doesn't exist.
No.
As far as I know, he doesn't.
There's a guy named Jason Long watching this going, oh.
Fuck you guys.
I guess I don't exist after all.
That's one less subscriber.
But yeah, Justin Long, they turn him into a walrus, man, and it's really fucked up.
Yeah, it just sounded very pseudoscientific, but morbid at the same time.
Yeah, it's more like he just kind of like surgically fashions him into a position where he can only be a walrus, and he keeps reinforcing, like, every time he does a walrus yell, he lets him eat, and every time he talks like a human, I think he like hits him or something. So he just conditions him into believing that he's a walrus.
It's pretty... Yeah, probably not gonna watch that one, but I will watch Moose Jaws.
Moose Jaws for sure, yeah. So Moose Jaws was another one based on a Smodcast podcast. And then Yoga Hosers, which I don't fully know the name of it, but after that Kijiji ad, Kevin started looking at more stuff from Canada, and he ended up, for a while there, they had a few weeks that where the Smodcast podcast was only Canadian stories, because they just loved them so much, because there's a lot of really great stories from Canada. But
that's actually really funny. They pretty much just changed the format of the show for a little while.
For a bit, yeah. And what was funny is that I'm pretty sure Moose Jaws was based on a moose-based story from Canada, where a guy hit a moose on a snowmobile and died. But the funny part was that the way that they wrote the article, it was like they were saying that the moose did not stick around for questioning or something.
What?
Like, it was very strange the way that they wrote it, and they were just dying when they were laughing, or like when they were reading it. It was like, it implied that somehow the moose had done this on purpose, and that it fled the scene or something. Like, it was very strange the way that they chose to write this news article.
A moose was seen evading police last night.
Yeah, but it says something like that, pretty much, yeah. And then, Krampus, which is the one that's coming out soon, which is about not Kris Kringle, but rather the Anti-Claus.
Wait, Krampus is by him?
Krampus is by them, yeah. The two of them, yeah.
I think that's actually on Netflix.
Is it?
Yeah, I think so.
Alright, give me a sec.
'Cause I remember having seen it and thinking, oh, I think.
All right. I actually didn't know that. I wasn't sure when it was coming out. I heard it on Spotify, and it sounds really scary. And the whole time, I'm just thinking that behind this is the two silliest dudes that I know of.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. So it's actually like a horror?
Yeah. So Krampus, I believe Krampus is I can't remember where it's from. Something like Norwegian. Yeah, or Swedish. But it's an old tradition where the Christmas Eve is essentially like the party for adults. And this is real, not part of the movie. But the parents would go out and just get shit-faced together on Christmas Eve, and then wake up early in the morning for the kids to open their presents on Christmas morning. But it along with it comes Krampus, the Anti-Claus, and they just found it so funny that they decided to turn it into an entire script.
That's really funny. No, I think I might have just seen an advertisement for it as well. But...
Yeah, I just heard it recently on Spotify, but it's probably... I mean, Kevin Smith is really good at making movies. He plays himself down all the time, but he's really good at it. Have you seen Red State?
I don't think so. I think you've just told me about it.
It's got John Goodman as one of the main characters. It's about it's based, I believe it's based on the Westboro Baptist Church, because the movie is set in a place where they have their own sort of ranch that is theirs under a religious rite, and a bunch of people who are very devout to them, and they start to murder people, and so then the government goes in, but it's very cynical, the way that the viewpoint of I think it's supposed to emulate things like Waco.
Yeah, but I would say that Westboro Baptist Church isn't really a cult. It's just a grouping of assholes.
At the moment.
No, you're right. At the moment, that could change any day. But for now, yeah, I think more Waco.
And the views of my brother does not reflect the views of the overall channel.
Yes, they certainly do not.
Please send your legal emails to...
If you get emails that have anything to do with the Westboro Baptist Church in the tagline, I would just junk them.
Probably. Yeah, that's a good plan, actually. I feel like we got off topic of where we were starting, but that's okay.
I don't remember where we started, so I think we have to press forward.
Oh,
yeah. Right.
I have two shows. No, I have a movie to talk about and a show to talk about. So, the movie, have you seen Jack Ryan? Shadow Recruit.
Yeah, I think so.
It's got the guy who's from Star Trek.
Yeah, I think so.
I believe it's based on a Tom Clancy book, but it started off fantastic, and I was really feeling like it was going to be a different movie in its genre, and then by the end, it was exactly like every other movie.
I was going to say that. I had high hopes, and it was interesting, but there just wasn't anything specific about it that grabbed me.
Yeah, well, I what I liked about it was that he's not a special agent, and he hasn't been dreaming of this his entire life. He goes through basic training in the military, saves somebody in the prologue, and then they ask him to be an analyst. And then about halfway through the movie, they're like, "You're the only person who knows how to do this. We don't have any operators. You're now an operator." So he didn't want to do that, and so he has to just find the courage to become an operator, which is like a group of people that no one's supposed to even know about. So I liked that. It was a great approach to it. And they even did the thing where Keira Knightley is his girlfriend, and they don't do that silly thing where they fall in love by the end of the movie. They meet in the prologue, and then it's just like 10 years later, and then the two of them are just together.
Oh, at least they cut out a lot of the crap.
Yeah, I like that. I like how they didn't need to... yeah, I mean, maybe that's part of the source material, but I love it when somebody has to change or doesn't care about a typical story arc, and they're okay with changing it around.
Well, people are smart. As long as you give them the pieces, they can put together the story on their own.
Yeah, for sure. I was also watching Game of Thrones recently, rewatching it, and I think what George R.R. Martin did was he wrote down every story arc you can possibly imagine, all the ones that we've seen over and over again every single year, and then he just decided randomly where he was going to fuck them up. Like, I don't want to give too many spoilers away for people who haven't watched the show yet, but there'll be something like the underdog story, and you think, well, this person's rising up and they're finally gonna... Nope. Like, either they die or something happens where they're just unable to complete their quest, and then it's just fucking over. Or like young love, and it's all looking fantastic and everybody's happy, and then suddenly one person doesn't like the other person, and now they might want to kill somebody. And that's Game of Thrones. It's like every story arc you've heard of with a variation that is enough to surprise you every time.
Well, he writes, imagine a story, like one of the paradigm stories.
Yeah.
But in reality.
Yeah.
It's essentially what
much.
it is. It's just a realistic take on the same stories we've heard over and over again. Things that actually make sense. Not one person triumphing against everyone because they're the one the story's being told about.
Yeah, even in the show, the guy tells a story of how he thought the underdog would win and did not. So I love it. It's such a great show. Have you seen the new poster for it?
Game of Thrones? You mean the next season?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
It gives away part of the show. I don't want to say what happened at the end of the episode or the end of the last season. A character we all love was, yes, thank you, phone alarm. A character that we all love may have perished at the end of the last season. And now the new poster has that character on the front.
What do you mean?
Like, the character's face is on the front of the poster, implying that they're going to be in the next season.
Yeah, that's true, but...
A strange decision, I thought. They probably want to hype it up.
Well, this is the thing. Yes, I could see that, but I could also very much see him just being, like, in dreams or a ghost or, like, just something where he's there as an actor, but, nothing's actually changed as far as the story's concerned.
Completely possible. Yeah.
Because otherwise, that would actually just be... You're right. That is really stupid.
Maybe they're just hyping it up. Maybe this person could be back in the first episode. Maybe they just don't care about their reveal. They would rather people be really just hyped up for the new episode and just get into it before it comes out. But I found that it would be a very strange decision.
Yeah, it's still... Well, I feel like George wouldn't have signed off on it unless he didn't. But...
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. Oh, but speaking of new shows, have you seen Veronica Jones?
Jessica Jones? Jesus, man.
Did I just say Veronica?
You're really bad at first names today.
Oh, yeah. Who the fuck is Veronica Jones?
I don't know. That's actually a fairly familiar name.
Veronica Jones. Oh, IMDb. Here we go. Okay. She has one credit. I'm sorry, Veronica Jones.
So not her. Yes, I watched Jessica Jones, and I also watched Daredevil, the two new Marvel shows.
Did you finish them both?
Yes.
Oh, aren't they wonderful?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Daredevil chronologically comes first.
Yes.
And then after Daredevil is over, Jessica Jones begins, essentially. Not directly, but like... I actually watched them in the other order, but they were both great. I'm really excited to see what they do next.
Yeah.
Because they're clearly writing these shows in parallel.
Oh, yeah. And both of them reference the Avengers. Did you notice that?
I heard it in, I think, Daredevil.
It's actually in Jessica Jones. This lady doesn't like Jessica because she says that supers destroyed the city and killed her mother. And then Jessica said, "We'll blame the big green guy or the guy with the iron suit."
Oh, okay. No, I do remember that now.
Yeah, because I wasn't there.
So Hell's Kitchen is in New York, obviously.
I just found this out recently. Hell's Kitchen is an actual place in real life. I never knew that. I thought it was a fictional thing.
I actually only found that out very recently, and it was mostly just because of the fact that everyone referred to Hell's Kitchen so nonchalantly, and I was like, what is going on here? And then, eventually sort of looked a little more into it.
Well, it's like there's sections of New York because it's so fucking big, you couldn't just call it all New York. Like, it's like Queens is a place in New York. And then...
Except Hell's Kitchen isn't one of the boroughs, I don't think. Or,
I don't even know what that means.
Okay, so actually, Hell's Kitchen might be just in the actual city of New York, because there's 5 boroughs to... I thought there was 5 boroughs to New York. There's Queens, New Jersey, the Bronx, Long Island, and I don't know. I think there's one more. I don't know why I'm forgetting the other one. But yeah, I don't know where. I think Hell's Kitchen is in there. Why don't we look this up? Both sitting here at computers. I'm actually staring at like the audio file frequencies coming out of my voice, and I'm not even looking up where Hell's Kitchen is.
That's funny.
Okay, Hell's Kitchen. Oh, it's actually in Manhattan. Oh, it's actually just a neighborhood.
Oh, cool. With a dense amount of superheroes and supervillains.
yeah, way too many.
But yeah, actually, Daredevil, the beginning premise of the show is based on what happened with the Avengers. Because the character who ends up being connected to the Daredevil is oh fuck, I don't want to give too much away.
I don't know which character you're talking about.
No, it's pretty early. She's set up by a company that made a ridiculous amount of money because of the destruction of New York. Like they had some sort of insurance or something, and because of all of that devastation, they just made just billions of dollars off of it. So that's the premise of Daredevil. That's how it starts.
I actually didn't really get all that out of it.
I just recently watched it the second time, so I got
a
lot more. But Jessica Jones was really good because of David Tennant. He really made it for me.
I liked David Tennant, but the one thing I thought was very interesting is that his character begged a lot of questions of morality that they didn't really even go into in the show. So, for anyone who doesn't know, I won't say any of that stuff, just because you don't even get introduced to his character until maybe the second episode, or the third episode. But yeah, I felt David Tennant's character could have been developed more directly.
Yeah, for sure. It certainly had potential there, and I liked how they did bring up a lot of morality questions with him. I felt he just did a really fucking good job.
Yeah, he sold it very well.
Although what I found very funny about it is that they relied very heavily on the fact that he was British, because every time that she's trying to find him, someone's like, "Oh, this British guy said something to me." Like every time, that's the only way that she knows who he is, and I think that might have just been like the writers realized that they had a really great thing going here. It's like when I try to draw myself, I throw on the glasses and the nose ring, and it's like, oh yeah, there you go.
It's automatically you, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to draw you with your short hair. There's nothing hugely unique or defining about your face.
Yeah, so you need to find those like small little details that are hard to replicate and are very subtle.
Yeah.
Like he's tall, he's got swooshy hair.
Swoosh.
That's from Doctor Who.
Oh yes.
Wilfred says that.
What's really cool is that I immediately accepted David Tennant as his character Kilgrave. like I never saw him as the Doctor when I was watching him, and I'd seen him play the Doctor for years, and saw him play nothing else other than that one dude in Harry Potter.
Oh, he plays. He plays Marty Crouch Jr.
It was Swedish Fireball. Ooh.
Oh yeah, that's him.
Oh fuck! I was just thinking about it the other day. We were doing Let's Play like things for a while without realizing what it was.
You mean like when we were young?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've actually brought this up in another podcast.
Because the two of us we would sit down together and play. The real difference is that the two of us really wanted to play more than watch, so it kind of created a problem.
Yeah, and also, well, right now we're actually this is different because we're podcasting. But when we do Bros Play, we're more focused on making what we're making rather than the actual act of playing and talking.
Yeah.
And that's all just almost a byproduct of the fact that we're doing this. Back then it was, well, I just want to play. We just both happen to be here.
Yeah. I can't remember what it was, but I was just thinking about something just last night. And it was something that, it was a complete inside joke, and it was something that would happen in the game. But it would have been interesting if we recognized it at the time. I don't even know if Let's Playing had become a thing at the time. So I think the chances of us recognizing that it made sense, that it was a thing, what we were doing there was a marketable thing. Who knows how that could have changed. Could have been very different if because I only realized that Let's Playing was a thing this year, and then it took me till like March to realize that 2 people works well, because I discovered Game Grumps. Before that, I thought that it just had to be one person.
Because everyone's coming to see you.
Well, a big part of it is that the most popular ones are solo people, like Markiplier and PewDiePie. And the Grumps are up there, but most of the solo people are higher up than them, even the ones who started after them.
Interesting.
It just seems, yeah, it's just, well, especially because part of it is that Game Grumps is that they do in serial, and they do the same game all the time. So there's a smaller group of people on YouTube who want to watch something continuously than the people who will watch just 10 minutes. And when PewDiePie makes a 10-minute or a 15-minute video, and only one of them about a specific game, it's really easy to get into it because you don't feel like you have to have seen anything. While as Game Grumps just uploaded episode 80 of their Bloodborne series. So if you've just joined Game Grumps, it's going to take you quite a while to get up to that point, unless you want to just jump in at episode 80. So that's a big part of it as well. There's not as many 2-player groups as there are the single people, yeah.
It's also a lot easier to organize one person, just in general.
Is it ever? Yeah, is it ever? And what's perfect is that when you came over here, is that we only needed the one microphone setup, which is great.
Which is actually something anyone listening to the channel should know, is we'll be able to do some slightly more in-person Let's Plays soon, so hopefully we can mix up our games a little while we actually have the LAN connection. Yeah,
well, I figured we'd do some Helldivers for a bit. You'll probably like it, so you'll probably want to play a little bit. But we can also do maybe some Shank play together, or something like that.
Yeah, Shank we definitely have to at least play. Whether or not it's recorded, Shank has to be played. That game is just too hilarious.
Plus, there's a whole second game.
And anyone listening to this who hasn't seen our Shank playthroughs, I advise both of them. Bros Play and Bros Play Together.
Yeah, and there's also a playlist. I don't know what I called it, but it's pretty obvious. It's just I made a playlist that is the Shank stuff, but in the order that we recorded it. So it goes Shank plays, or then plays together, and I think it actually goes back to the original. But it's just it's kind of like one of those just to fill yourself in, because there's some things we say that we discovered at certain parts in one thing that wouldn't quite make sense if you didn't watch them in order.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more logical. Also, it would be weird watching the regular Shank, and our jump in understanding would just be huge, but also it would be months later, so we'd be talking about different things, and I think in order is probably a good plan.
For sure. I recently have been changing the collateral, the design stuff, like the branding.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to get away from the pinwheel streaks that I had going on. They didn't work well for a thumbnail. It just created too much. It's too distracting, I guess. And so I went for a more solid, clean thumbnail style because I really care about it being very obvious what the game is, what number on the playthrough it is, and which show it is.
And yeah, also that it's yours.
Yeah, and I wanted to be obvious. There are times where I go through my subscriber feed and I just skip by something, and then I'm out of things to watch. So then I'm like really paying attention to what's going on, and I go, "Oh, I didn't know that was about that guy," because they don't make thumbnails that are obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as our thumbnails are very obvious. I also changed the. Oh no, go ahead.
Oh, nice! I like that. So I actually just pulled up the website here. I'm just looking at the last few uploads. So it's now broken up into what's the game and episode and what show are you watching.
Yeah, BP being Bros Play, GP being Gïrth Plays.
Yeah. At first I could not figure out what those meant, but that's yeah, I like. Oh, I can even see that it's changed since the beginning of the Fallout.
Yeah. Yeah, and then what I had tried for one day was putting in our animated versions of ourselves in the thumbnail, and that might work one day when we have a lot of recognizability, but it's not obvious that it's Dark Souls. So I wanted to take the art right from Dark Souls that people would recognize, because I'm a Let's Player watcher, so. I go through these things and I find out what makes sense to me and what I would like to have when I'm searching for other people's Let's Plays. And a few things where the number that you're looking for, especially if they're somebody who doesn't always archive their episodes into playlists, Kevin, you want to know the playthrough part number and want to be very obvious. The game as well it needs to be very obvious. I went for I changed the color scheme between Gïrth Plays and Bros Play, between like the one is dark on the left side and it's dark on the right side.
I noticed that.
But I may end up finding a completely different color just to make them very obvious.
I was going to say I like what you did there, making them differentiated by color, but you're right, it's not really intuitively obvious that that's how you're breaking them up.
Yeah, I may go for like a nice smooth purple.
That's maybe not bad. So would you make purple Bros Play?
No, probably Gïrth Plays. I think that Bros Play, the blue just works really well with Bros Play.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know. Yeah. Also, something a little bit strange, but I don't really want to be Gïrth anymore. I kind of want to just be Mitch.
All right.
And I'm not saying like don't call me that. What I mean is just like and the name Gïrth Plays isn't going anywhere. That's staying no matter what. But I like Mitch. Yeah. I chose Gïrth and previously on this channel Sidewalk Painter. The true fans would remember that one. That was like 4 years ago. But I chose those names because I never liked my own name. And then recently thank you, Aeroplane. I was really hoping you would interrupt my podcast. Can you hear that?
Oh, I can definitely hear it.
Ah, that's nice. that's comforting. Oh, yes. And then I also live slightly under. It's not really. It's slightly underground, I guess. Like there's a hill right next to us, and there are constant like 18-wheelers driving over it, and it just shakes the apartment.
Oh, that's tough.
Like everything that a voice actor might not want.
Yeah, it's a perfect place for a studio.
But yeah, I'm gonna go in as Mitch. And yeah.
I think we figured out the name for this podcast.
What's that?
Call me Mitch.
Call me Mitch. I'm thinking about changing the name of the channel because I want something that's a much more not vague but broad. Like I want it to sort of encapsulate all of us. Because my intention is to have more content on this channel that is me and other people than it is just me. Because I like Gïrth Plays, but it's not like I love Bros Play. I don't ever have to be in a mood to do the show with you. Whereas with Gïrth Plays, I won't record for weeks and just so one day just go, I just really feel like recording today. So that's one of those things where I love Bros Play. And I would love to do something else with Dane if he every fucking like guy fucks with me so often. He'll say that he wants to do a Let's Play show, and then when we go to try to do it, he says he doesn't, and then later he'll give me a hard time for not wanting to do it, even though he was the one who didn't want to do it, and then I find out he's just fucking with me and he just likes it. Anyway.
Are you sure he's not actually a woman? I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not
The
sexist.
previous opinions explained are not reflective of Broscast or Gïrth Games.
So maybe that's the... Call me Mitch and don't sue us.
Call me Mitch, and maybe he's a woman. Yeah, so I don't know what I want to do, exactly what I want to change the name to. Also, I really want to make an actual theme song for Bros Play. Because right now it's like a placeholder.
What do you mean?
Well, I made Gïrth Plays in like April, I think. Maybe a little later than that. But I just did this really quick thing and I was like, Gïrth Plays!
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then when you came along, we did Bros Play. I was like, Bros Play! No. And it's actually the same no too. Like I cut it into there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I really want to make something. Now I can animate. So I can actually animate a theme song for us.
That would be awesome. Like a 10, 15 second like intro song?
Yeah, definitely. Like 15 would be definitely a max. Even then it's kind of pushing it.
Well, because even like 5 to 10 seconds would be better. Just because no one wants to watch, like, you know, especially if you're marathoning episodes, which are like 11 to 12 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Have you ever heard of Kitty Cat Gaming?
No.
It's Aaron Hansen's wife, Susie, has a Let's Play channel that she recently started called Kitty Cat Gaming, and I like the intro. I think it's fun. It's just a little too long if you were to watch in sequence. Like Game Grumps is like really fucking quick, and it just gets you right into it. And it's a good song and it's catchy, so it's like it never really bothers me. With Kitty Cat Gaming, I find it difficult to watch that beginning every single time, because it's like an old style intro from like the 50s. He's like, "Hey kids, it's time for another episode of Kitty Cat Gaming."
Oh, so it's just like kind of cool. It's almost like, have you seen House of Cards?
Yeah.
There's this long, very cool, very interesting sort of cityscape with this really intense music, and it kind of gets you hyped up the first time. But the second time you have to watch it, it's vicious. It is so not fun the second time you have to watch it.
Yeah, it's very slow. It's very slow.
Well, one show I watched recently is called The Misfits. It was on BBC a few years ago.
But I love ya.
Yeah. So the first season was awesome. And the one really, really big selling point for me was that they had a great intro that had awesome music, and the intro actually like showed you each of their powers like in this really subtle way. And that was awesome. And then the second season started, and the second season was okay, but it was now starting to get a little contrived. It was like, so the entire first season was them dealing with essentially one problem, and then in the second season they deal with a problem per episode.
Oh boy.
And it's like, wow, okay, so now we're just churning out episodes here.
Yeah, Just streamlining the hero process.
Got to the 3rd season, and people are started, like, now there's a person who can, like, move powers between people, and, like, they keep the intro sequence the same, even though people's powers change. And, and I was just sort of losing it in the 3rd season. I watched the first episode of the 4th season, and it became very obvious to me when they did the intro sequence. They updated it, and none of the original characters were in there, except for one.
Whoa.
They didn't even explain where they went. They were all there in the last episode of the 3rd season. So they must have just not been interested in coming back.
Oh, boy. Well, you know where one of them went.
What?
You know where one of the actors went.
Who was that? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that around that? I didn't even know that was around that time, but I did know yeah.
Jesus.
Wow.
I think I've explained this before. I live down the street from a fire department, police department, and hospital.
The hospital where they would take
the
ambulances
hospital.
To, yeah.
Yeah. And it has a helipad. So every loud possible emergency vehicle comes by. And I wanna like reference a meme from Daredevil when he's explaining how when he first got his powers to hear, and he's like, I used to lie awake and think about all the ambulance sounds, and then when I got my powers, I realized just how many sirens there were.
Well, you know.
And for me, it's just like, I used to know about sirens, and then I moved here and really found out how many there were.
Lots of sirens.
Well, and then I work down the street, and it faces onto, like, you can see the fire department. So, pretty much every day, a fire truck leaves the station with the lights on, which is crazy, that there's a fire that bad every day. And it kind of makes me sad to hear ambulance and fire trucks and police and stuff. But it's also really amazing that we have a system where people can respond to that. Where on a regular, like, the fires are happening daily, whether the fire department exists or not. So seeing them leave the store or leave their hall, I guess, is just so cool that we have that, something that's so we consider so necessary now, but in many times in the past we had no way of reacting to a large fire.
Well, back in the day, I mean, anyone who's seen Gangs of New York has seen a reenactment or a dramatization of this, but back in the day, the fire departments in New York didn't have jurisdictions, so when a fire department showed up, there was no final decision on who got to put the fire out. So there would be brawls between fire departments while the building burned.
Fuck. Gangs of New York is one of the best movies.
It's definitely one I have to watch again.
Oh, yeah. Is it Daniel Day-Lewis? Is that the name of the guy who plays the villain?
I think so.
I think so, because it's one of his biggest roles of that actor, at least, and
yeah,
like a critically acclaimed role.
Daniel Day-Lewis,
and he hated the hair, like the way that his hair was all greased down.
Yeah, his hair is actually so. Yeah, that's Daniel Day-Lewis. Man, he does a really good job in that movie.
Yeah, does he ever?
Holy shit!
The whole movie is amazing, especially what's his name, who's almost always in comedies. C. One of his initials is C.
Oh, John C. Reilly. I love when you get his middle name.
Yeah.
He has 2 first names, you get a letter.
Yeah.
Oh, just to finish up, and if anyone's interested about Misfits. As soon as I saw that title sequence of the 4th season, I just turned it off. I haven't watched it since.
Okay.
So anything that happens in the 4th and 5th, I mean, let me know if I'm an asshole and I missed a bunch of stuff, but I just straight up did not watch the 4th and 5th season of Misfits.
So, let me know if you're an asshole. You can send the emails to.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I wanted to mention, this is for both you, and I'm assuming Dad will listen to this later, and also anyone else out there who's interested in this at all, but you know the Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock podcast with Joe Rogan, right?
Yeah.
The last Graham Hancock one, it's actually the one where Joe reintroduces Graham to weed. Like he's been like he was like 3 years sober, and then Joe's like, "You want to smoke?"
Yeah. I saw it.
So you did, because you listened to that one, and you also listened to the 2 most recent Randall Carlsons on his own.
Yeah,
and
I believe so.
And the one with all of them.
They every time I listen to them, they freak me the fuck out. It's one of the only things that, because they're so good at putting it in perspective. Because we think about our Earth as just being like here, and then the universe is out there, but we're in the universe. And not only are we in it, we are so tiny that the universe wouldn't even notice if we died.
Doesn't give a shit. So
no, our solar system could explode and the universe wouldn't care.
So for anyone who's interested, this whole series that it's not really a series, but this essentially 4 or 5 podcasts that Joe Rogan has are all just about how dynamic the climate and the Earth and past civilizations may or may not have been. There's actually about 12 hours of podcast to be listened to, but the episodes, if anyone's interested, are 501, 551, 606, and 725. If you've listened to all 4 of those, you pretty much know all the basics of what there is to know about our climate now.
If you don't want to back out of whatever you're doing while you listen to this, I will throw those into the description. You can go and click on them at the end of the episode.
Wonderful. And
that was the first broadcasty thing I've ever said on the show.
And no, that was perfect. I was gonna say I'll give them to you at the end, but I'd be very interested to discuss with anyone who's listened to, I mean, even just bits and pieces of these. So for both you and Dad, when we see each other at Christmas, I'd be very interested to discuss.
Yeah, it's amazing. Was one of them saying that there's roughly 80,000 Earth life ending asteroids constantly circling the Earth? Something like 80,000?
Yes. Well, it's a belt. It's
the Oort belt.
No.
No.
I forget what it's called, but it's essentially a meteoric orbit, but the meteor hit something and was shattered into all of those little pieces. And those are now following the same orbit as the original meteor did.
Oh.
And that, we cross over it for 12 days, twice a year. We cross through that path.
And they're in I think it was 1981. There was actually I think they talked about this. There was a life-ending asteroid that passed by us at about the distance that the moon was,
which is actually relatively far when you think about it.
It's far relative to us because we don't have any other we don't have any better distances, but the moon is the closest thing to us, and it's not really that far in as far as the universe is concerned.
Well, interestingly enough, it's actually not. We've had objects that have passed between Earth and our outermost satellites. Yeah, that's close. That's only a few hundred kilometers.
That's unreal. Also, gravity. You probably knew this, but gravity changes the flow of time
heavily. We've both seen Interstellar.
That too. Oh yeah, for sure.
I actually started watching that again today because everyone refuses to watch it with me.
It's such a good movie, but the best example of this, of both that and the time being relative, is satellites that we use. For people who use satellite time, which is very accurate. One of the most accurate timekeeping things we have, other than, what's the other one? Atomic time or something like that?
Well, satellite time is really filtered down from atomic time. Because satellite time just means you synchronize with essentially the whole world, so everyone agrees.
Yeah.
But, atomic clocks are how you... This is what I don't understand. An atomic clock takes an atom of cesium. And everyone's seen the experiment where you drop cesium in water and it blows the tub up.
I haven't, but I saw Veritasium explained the atomic... Or it might have been Vsauce. One of them explained atomic clocks.
Mm-hmm. The outermost electron in cesium jumps out of its orbit and back down to its orbit I think it's like 1.6 million times or something like that. Some ridiculous amount of times a second. But it's the exact number of times. It is
every time
so
it's exact.
Precise to 1 second that we can't distinguish it as different. And that's how we keep it.
Yeah.
It used to be they would just make very, very fine clockwork out of very precise metals and keep it essentially in a safe. Same way we calibrate what 1 kilogram is. Somewhere in England, there's a perfect 1 kilogram titanium counter, or I guess sample weight, that is just always used as our reference for what 1 kilo is, and everything goes out from there.
I found that so fascinating. Oh, but sorry, back to the satellite thing. They have to manually, or not manually, but they have algorithms to figure out how far back they have to set the clocks by like seconds, because they're further away from Earth, and gravity affects them significantly less than it does on the ground, so that they are seconds behind us, I believe, or ahead of us. Either way, they have to set the clocks back seconds in order to be accurate to what time it is down here, because the time moves differently up there.
And another factor is that they're moving so fast that time relative to them is actually different.
Yeah, satellites, for anybody who doesn't know, they are constantly technically falling. So what you end up doing, if you can imagine you had a cannon on one part of the Earth and you fired it, eventually gravity would push it down and hit the ground. But if you could fire it fast enough to where the force of the cannonball was greater than gravity, the cannonball would theoretically fly around the Earth and come back around and hit the cannon. And that's what you have with a satellite. They put it into they stabilize it somehow with rockets or some crazy science shit, and it gets to a point where its forward momentum is would it be equal to gravity's force?
Well,
like very similar.
If you were to leave a satellite for all time, it would fall out of the sky.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's like if I attach a string to if I attach a string to a weight, and then I just try and yank that string, nothing's gonna happen. But if I throw the weight forward and then swing the string to the side, I'll start to get it into a spin, like when you spin a skipping rope around or something. It's the same idea. You have to essentially slingshot it up to the point where Earth's gravity on the satellite causes it to fall around the Earth, which causes the gravity vector to change and causes it to fall again more around the Earth. Earth is constantly pulling it inwards, but because it's pulling it at different directions, it actually just keeps pushing it around the planet.
How often do you drop gravity vector at a party?
That's actually the first time. I have a geophysics professor that says it all the time, and I haven't used it in years. But, it comes in handy sometimes.
Gravity vector.
Well, one really interesting fact that I was discussing with one of my housemates the other day is that gravity doesn't end the same way an electric or a magnetic force does. So if you have...
Yeah, it's a strange thing.
If you have two magnets and you touch them together, they're obviously going to hold each other. And if you pull them apart such that you don't feel any attraction between them, you've actually ended their attraction. There's no field interaction, they stop.
Right.
But no matter how far away you go from the Earth, anywhere in the universe, it will have an effect on your net gravitational field.
Yeah, which is why zero gravity is just more of it implies more than it is.
Well, because technically it's negligible gravity.
Well, it's 0 point something of what you experience on Earth. That's what they mean by zero gravity.
Yeah, it's minimal.
It's 0 point something. It's very, very small, but you are always affected by Earth's... Or no. So you're saying all gravity... So the Earth affect... you can be affected by Earth's gravity forever? As far as you go?
Yeah. Even if that effect is so absolutely astronomically minuscule that it doesn't mean anything, it's still there, which means if you were to delete every planet other than Earth and the farthest planet from Earth, billions of years from now, they'd find each other.
Wow.
That is what is... I believe that the only parameter that truly exists in physics is gravity. And that the rest of the processes we see in the world are all a result of functions of gravity.
Yeah.
You have...
can gravity create... through holding things together and densely packing them, that can create heat, right?
Tons of heat.
Yeah, and that's the two driving forces, or actually the huge driving force in most physics things is the temperature of something and its weight.
Well,
and between the two of them, you can, like, everything has been created from the two of them.
The heat of the Earth is actually from two things. There's the pressure, but there's also a lot of radioactive decay that takes place in both the core and the mantle.
Exciting.
Well, that's why the Earth... So back in... You know how the Earth used to be super molten and crazy, and then eventually it cooled down. Something changed there. Back in the day, and when I say that, I mean billions of years ago, it was all aluminum metals that were decaying, and they caused so much more heat than the metals that we currently see decaying now. So back then, the Earth was just in general a lot hotter than it is today. From inside.
Interesting. But what I meant by like the original, I believe Neil deGrasse Tyson refers to it as the crucible, the original most likely source of all of the majority of our elements came from a single condensed, something condensed to a point and then exploded, being the Big Bang. So would that not be that, like, both heat and gravity being like the most basic of mutators?
Well, gravity doesn't actually do anything to anything. Applying gravity to an object doesn't change it. The force behind... So, let's say you have a person and you put them in a place with higher gravity. The gravity itself is not actually affecting them. The force of the floor below you is crushing you. Gravity is not actually touching you at all. Gravity doesn't have heat or light or anything or electricity. Gravity creates all those other things, and those are the things which cause change.
And didn't they say that there's something like 90% of the gravity waves that they've detected are they don't know, they have unaccounted sources? They don't know where they're coming from?
I actually don't know what type of gravity waves you're talking about.
I think it was something that Neil deGrasse Tyson had said, maybe on, because he has a radio show. It might have been on the radio show, or it might have been on the Cosmos show. But he was saying that something crazy like 90% of the gravity waves that they have detected, like really far out from here, that they don't know where they're coming from. It's just they're unaccounted for sources of gravity waves.
Wow.
Which I mean, the universe is fucking terrifying and exciting at the same time. Because I forget who said it. It was like, either we're completely alone in the universe or we are not alone in the universe, and both are equally as terrifying. So for me, when we say that there may be another universe pushing up against ours, I'm like, that's exciting and scary.
I actually think the things that have happened here are probably more scary and wonderful and also terrifying.
Oh, on Earth, yeah, for sure.
Because the universe is obviously huge and expansive and ridiculous, but we're not even though we are in the universe and the universe has an effect on us, realistically, everything that happens on Earth is all that's important to us. It's much
more important. Especially because it takes so long for things outside to get to us, because there's so much distance between us and the nearest stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well,
all the light we get from the nearest star is still a ridiculous amount of time away.
4 light years.
4 light years, which is how many actual years?
Well, it depends on how fast you're traveling. Because 4 light years is defined as the amount of time it takes for the amount of distance light is able to travel in 4 years. And light travels at 300 million meters per second, and there's about 315 million seconds in a year.
So would that mean, like, 4 light years, would that mean to us was 4 years ago?
Yes, what we are seeing of a star 4 light years away is what it was doing 4 years ago. So if we see a supernova from 80 light years off, we missed it.
Yeah.
We're just watching... We're watching a video, essentially. Anything we see of any star... Even our sun is 8 minutes away. So anything that happens to the sun doesn't show up for us for 8 minutes.
The light... It was in Cosmos. He said the light that we see is just a ghost of what was there.
It's exactly what it is.
It's fucking awesome.
Well, I heard this one video shown to me actually by the same housemate who I was discussing with. And it was really funny because it was a very smart guy, essentially a scientist, but he was arguing that the Big Bang doesn't make any sense. And he was presenting all this scientific reasoning for why, God is the truth and why Big Bang is.
Right.
So it was weird to be listening to him and hearing these points that actually kind of made sense. The most interesting one he said, this one really resonated with me. If in the beginning, which is how the Big Bang believes it, there is a infinitesimally small point that is spinning at really high speeds at super high temperatures and is super dense and then explodes, right?
Yeah.
So why is it, if that object is spinning, that when it explodes, we get objects spinning in opposite directions? There's moons in our own solar system that spin the opposite direction from all the planets. Even some of the planets spin opposite directions. But in physics, there is a theory of angular conservation where any momentum in one direction must always be matched in that same direction.
But it could also be, let's say, something is spinning clockwise, and if it hits something much bigger than itself, could it not theoretically, in that collision, be twisted the complete opposite direction and go counterclockwise?
I'm thinking about that now, so imagine, if everyone will, just for their own sake, imagine your hands, place them down on a table and rotate them both to the right. So you're right, if your right hand is significantly larger than your left hand, so just imagine your thumbs grabbing your fingers and pushing them up in the other direction, they'll start to spin the opposite way.
Right.
So that is possible. That would be very interesting when it comes to gravitational and impact effects. But that's because sort of my theory, is that, some bullshit happened along the way. It's been a long ride.
Yeah, well, it's been something like 14.4 billion years since the hypothesis or the possible beginning of the universe. That's a lot of time for things to spin in different directions and smash into each other. Even the Earth got smashed. Like the moon is part of another planet that smashed into us and became, like, it was two planets smashed into each other. What remains is what we call Earth, and everything that didn't stay on Earth formed into the moon. So lots of shit has smashed into each other.
Well, even as recently as, well, think about this: the Bible puts the Great Flood that Noah survived at about 3,000 years prior to the birth of Christ. So that's 5,000 years previous to now, right?
Right.
And about 5,000 years ago, I guess more 4,800, there was a meteorite impact in the center of the Indian Ocean, which would have created essentially global floods for all of Eastern Africa, Australia, Indonesia, China, India, all in and around that same period of time in recent history. Essentially,
that's very recent.
That is recorded history. Even recorded history goes back almost 7,000 years.
Holy shit! Well, even the there was an asteroid that landed in Russia a few years back, and it was huge.
It landed, or are you talking about the Chelyabinsk explosion?
This was the one that was caught by hundreds of dash cams, because everyone in Russia has dash cams.
Yeah, that one exploded in the upper atmosphere. Or
did it?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it hit the ground. I didn't know that.
No, it actually. That's one of the reasons it was caught so well. Is that it exploded. It was so perfect. And if you look at a dash cam, it was exploded pretty much 30% into the top of all their frames. It was an ideal height for the filmage that everyone had.
Wow. But he makes a great point on the Joe Rogan podcast. He was saying that if it instead of being 1,500 injuries, it was 1,500 deaths, we would be significantly more concerned with what's going on outside of our planet. And when I was young, I wasn't crazy into science, so everything to me was about opinions. So one person would say it was an asteroid that killed the dinosaurs, and then another person would say something completely different, and I didn't know what to believe. And then later on, you had told me you are both my driving force to start working out and eating healthy, and my driving force to be interested in science. Because long before I discovered Neil deGrasse Tyson, I had you telling me cool shit from your science classes.
Well, that's where it all started for me, too. It was high school science.
Yeah, and I wish that I had... The thing with me is that traditional schooling isn't geared the way that I want to learn. So I can learn more in a 20-minute Vsauce episode than I could in a whole semester of high school science. Because I like the way that he presents information. It's interesting, it's fun, it's condensed. Oh boy, I'm getting a phone call. Okay, give me a second.
All right, this is great podcast quality we have going on here.
Hello? No, this is Mitch.
I don't know if you can hear me right now.
That's quite all right.
I think it was the wrong number. People should know not to call the wrong number when we're doing a podcast.
Not during the show. He's like, hi, Mike. And I'm like, no, Mitch.
Almost. Almost.
Yeah, almost. Oh boy. But speaking on this topic of crazy shit, have you heard about the D-Wave quantum computer?
I have not.
Okay, so for anybody who doesn't know, all computers operate in 0 and 1. So pretty simple. So everything condenses down to like 001, 011, 00, all that kind of stuff. Quantum computers operate on 0, 1, and 2.
Why? Why rewrite the wheel now?
Because it's something like 33,000 times faster.
Oh.
Yeah, they set it up against another. They set up a computer that operates in zeros and ones, and then they matched up against a 012, and the 012 figured out the same problem in 1,000,000 times faster.
Well, do you want to know why that is? Because as soon as you pointed that out to me, it all makes a lot of sense. Do you know how a digit is represented in binary space?
With zeros and ones?
Yeah, but I just mean, let's say you're trying to do an X or a Y. How do you represent that in binary space? Because the values for, you know how we go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 9, and then we go 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2.
Right.
Counting in binary is the same, so it'll go all zeros and a 1, and then all zeros, 1, 0, all zeros, 1, 1. Like, it counts that same way. So for numbers, It's easy. But for letters, what we do is we come up with a binary association. So do you know what ASCII is? Have you ever heard that word?
No, never.
So ASCII is the original, notepad text. It only had uppercase and lowercase, which it can't differentiate between. And all of, the basic, period, / exclamation point, and that's about it. Only had 128 characters in it. And that's because you have to assign a certain size of byte to handle it, a certain piece of code. They assigned 8 bits, so they had 8 zeros or ones.
Oh, and that's where 8-bit comes from.
Yeah, that allowed them to do 128 characters. But now that we have infinite characters, when you think about all the alt characters and just anything you might need, you start to need a 16-bit or a 32. Well, I mean, everyone knows their computer is either in 32 or 64-bit, right?
Yep.
Because the 64-bit message has enough. Well, actually, this is a computer science thing I'll have to drop on you guys now. In computing, whatever your RAM is, square that, and it represents the maximum storage space you can appreciably use.
That's what I was gonna say. Like when you were asking me why a quantum computer would be better or so much better, I was gonna ask, is it compounded or an exponent or something? Because that's usually where things end up happening with computer systems.
Mm-hmm. So when we went from 32-bit computing, so the 32-bit count, you square that and you get 4 gigabytes. So 4 gigabytes is the maximum RAM you can have on a 32-bit machine. That's why they don't exist anymore.
Yeah, they're not nearly as popular.
Well, when you go to a 64-bit, the amount of allowable RAM goes up to 2 exabytes.
Oh, so there's the roof is far too high at the moment. No one's gonna rock exabytes in there.
Exactly. But
we haven't even moved past gigabytes yet. Not even close.
The reason we do that system is because we needed more bits to store information.
Yeah,
but
which is why we went.
That's only a limitation of the fact that everything doubles in computing. It's always binary, right? So every time you go up one multiple, you square everything. But if we had one more digit, if you had the counting went 0, 1, 2, 1, 0, 1, 2, 2, 0, 1, 2, then you would have 50% less space used.
Jeez.
And 50% less space is not the important part. 50% less to read when computing is the important part.
Somebody said the other day at work that I said something like it's the best time to be alive, and they said, I don't know about that, and they said something like, why do you think that? And I said, I don't know, maybe the fact that every one of us has something in our pocket more advanced than Star Trek's communicators.
Yeah, who was that? Joe that pointed that out?
Oh, someone. Yeah, it's probably not an original idea, but I was just watching Star Trek last night, and they're rocking communicators that don't even do as much as ours do. The microphone quality is just extraordinary on their communicators, but we can accomplish the same thing with a phone call, except we could also text it to you and not phone you, or we could send you a photograph. Like, we can do way more than they could even do with their vision of the future. It's like 2200 or year 2200 for them. Is like they thought that was ridiculously advanced, and now almost everybody in our Western culture has a smartphone.
Well, I've heard a lot of people say stuff like, we were born too late to discover the Earth and too soon to discover the universe. And I think that's bullshit on 2 different accounts. First of all, if there is a generation which will discover the universe before we get steamrolled into dust and reset to the caveman age, it's us, because our kids are too late. And we don't know shit about the Earth. We actually, when we were born in the 90s, we obviously assumed, oh my god, we're in year 2000, we must have shit figured out.
Yeah.
Nothing. We started figuring stuff out, especially in the geological world. We really started figuring stuff out in 2005, 2010. Now we're starting to get some things. We're still in the infancy of understanding the planet. And I'd rather be around for the technological understanding than yep, we got it. We made a dam. The dam works. It's good.
I'm concerned about the perspective of another intelligent life form that were to observe us, because they would be seeing that we're growing new organs for people in jars to give them, organs that didn't exist. We don't have to take it from one person to another. We can actually make one from nothing. We can take stem cells and repair people's bodies like a science fiction novel, but we're also murdering each other over the color of our skin. And I think that when you put the two of them together, there's got to be another race that's watching us going, what the fuck is going on down there? Like, what don't you guys get?
Well, I think there's no way that a race could get there without having gone through that struggle too.
Yeah, conflict breeds opportunity or something like that. Like, a lot of our extraordinary leaps in technology came from absolute necessity through wartime. That we are never more motivated to figure something out than when we could possibly die. Like, the atom bomb, I think, was probably hypothesized long before World War II, but they pushed hardcore on it as soon as they had an actual threat, which could potentially take over the Earth, and they pushed that forward. And that might not have, like, the atomic bomb might not have been something that they worked so hard on, had it not been for Germany rising up against the rest of the Earth.
Interestingly enough, it wasn't even Germany that got the front end of it.
No. I've heard a lot about World War II, and I know a lot of the dates and the information and the places and stuff, but what I don't know, what I've never heard connected, is the connection between Japan and Germany. Were the two of them allies, or just rather it's more like my enemy's enemy situation?
As far as I'm aware, it is very much the enemy of my enemy, and not even as much in that way. It was, they were essentially just murdering and pillaging. Like, they weren't taking part in what would be called justified warfare. So,
Japan?
Yeah. They were just slaughtering the Chinese. Just, like, the Chinese people still hate Japanese people.
I've heard that, yeah.
And that's why it is, because they murdered them. That's what a lot of the war was all about. And that's kind of what divided countries back then was, are you fighting because there's a war, or are you fighting because you're fucked? That's actually one of the reasons, even nowadays, Japan doesn't harbor as much ill will for the States as you'd think. There's an understanding.
Which is interesting, because we did something to them.
Well, we interned them.
Is it called an embargo? Is an embargo when you stop them from trading?
Yes.
Yeah, didn't we do a fossil fuel embargo on Japan during the era?
Probably, but that's pretty standard against a wartime country.
But I could have sworn that we did that before Pearl Harbor, and that Pearl Harbor was a response.
Yeah, there's also a lot of conspiracy about us. Okay. I say us, by that I mean U.S. wanting to join the war.
U.S. us.
Yeah, exactly. U.S. wanting to join the war, and so kind of sort of provoking them. I think there's a lot of conspiracy about that, but I really don't know too many of the specifics.
Yeah.
World War II is, it's crazy how little technology there was then. Just the information that's available on World War II is all manual or remastered or reinterpreted. It's very strange.
Have you listened to Dan Carlin's Hardcore History?
I've been hearing about it for a long time, and I've been interested, but it's just too much time.
It's extremely long. He's got, I think it's a 6-part podcast series on World War I from start to finish, and each episode is about 3 hours.
Yeah, that's the problem, man. 18 hours of World War I is hefty.
Yeah. And it is so fucking interesting. I had no idea. Not a fucking idea. Because World War II seemed to just be much more interesting for television and movies. So it came to the front of our idea. And it's also the most recent significant, or like it's the most recent Great War, the most recent World War. So a lot of people know a lot more about World War II than I. But World War I was fucking horrible. Like, it was just brutal. And what was so brutal about it is that it was the first war of its kind where the romanticism of war still existed before that, because before that was the Napoleonic Wars, where people enjoyed the idea of war because young men were serving their country and putting a meaning in life, and they marched in and they took turns firing at each other, and it was all clean warfare. And then World War I was just horrible because it was Germany, right? I'm not wrong about that.
Yep.
And Germany they had decided what the rules of war were, but didn't decide to tell the other side. So France walked in with bright white or red, I think it is. Yeah, bright red coats and their big white gloves, all ready like a marching band. And Germany walked in with camouflage and helmets. And France had hats and it was all about the romanticism of war. And then very shortly after the war started, they realized we were not prepared for this.
But that's just retarded, though.
It's a little silly in retrospect, but I think at the time it made a lot more sense that everybody had followed that system of marching in unison, finding each other on a battlefield, having the commanders walk out into the center and shake hands first. Like, that kind of thing.
I understand that, but
sense.
It's also like you go into a competition, you could follow the meta, you could play by sort of the generally accepted rules other people use, or you could win. Well, that's the thing. I feel like once you go into warfare, you are a bad commander if you think there are hard, fast rules.
Yeah.
When
And
life and death is the ultimate end of the day decision, you have to have a better context for your decisions.
For sure. And they played fast and loose with the UN's ruling of because they had only very, 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 very recently, I think it was only like within a decade or even less, written the rules of war. So it was very new. And the UN had decided on things like no chemical warfare. I could be wrong about that. I realize that now that I say that. I could be wrong about how long ago it was before the war. But anyway, it was fairly new. And so Germany kind of did some loophole stuff that they thought, well, we'll just figure out if they consider this warfare. So they did things like, instead of shooting gas bombs at people, they just took barrels of heavy, thick chlorine gas and just opened them downwind or upwind.
Just let it happen.
And just let it go there. And they're like, no, these aren't weapons. We're just airing out our barrels of poison. And the trenches, I never knew this. Trenches were not the intention. They didn't go into the war with the idea that they were going to build trenches. There was so much artillery fire and so heavy in artillery compared to the past that there was just the only thing they could do was dig in. They had no other options. They were firing, I'm going to get this wrong, I think it was 40,000 shells a day.
Holy shit.
And each one of them could take roughly out a football field worth of space. And you think about how many people you can fit into a football field and imagine an artillery shell devastating the center of it. The majority of the people are dead, and with nothing you can even do about it. And then that's one of 40,000 shells fired that day. It was so bad that both sides were having a hard time making sure that they had enough artillery shells. Because they had stockpiled during when they didn't have war, and then they had been warring for only weeks. I think it was only a few weeks in, and they were like, "We're out of artillery shells."
Oh my god!
They just wrecked their reserves because, as with most wars, nobody really knows how long it's gonna be, and most people would rather finish the war fast. So they all just blasted all their artillery shells in the hopes that the war would end.
Well, at least everybody did that. So it wasn't like one guy just collected all his chips and waited for everyone else to be weak. Goes in for a quadruple kill.
But it's so interesting because with World War II, the people who propagated the beginning, or the countries that propagated the war, were involved in the war heavily. While as with World War I, the people who started it ended up not playing a very big role at all.
Yeah,
because their bigger brothers got into the fight.
They were basically non-entities.
It was. Do you remember the country names? Because I can't.
Yeah, it was Austria, which I believe was So it was Austria-Hungary and well, it's one of them. Yeah. Austria-Hungary was backed up by Germany, and that's when it just all went downhill.
And Germany was relatively new as a country, right? They were really young.
Yeah, they were actually pretty young. Germany as a country is really not that old. But Germany's birth is kind of a... Like, it's not really a steadfast thing. Sort of, like, developed over time.
But didn't it birth out of another country, though?
Yeah, its official sovereignty, I believe, came from... I don't know where they split off from, actually. I really should be more informed to be talking about this. But my favorite part about any war that's ever happened has to be the French. I think it was World War II. The French built this huge wall along the eastern edge of their country to defend from Germany.
Yeah.
And they didn't build it the whole width of their country. So Germany went up, over, and around the wall. And that was it. And all I could think is, of course, you idiots built a wall around 90% of your country, even though you had an ocean you could have built it to. You deserve what you got.
Well, I don't know.
They deserve... Well, they didn't. I mean, they didn't... I don't mean that their soldiers deserved it, but their country didn't really lose much. And their country, like in World War II, they lost a little and then they gained... It was like every other country. Germany started expanding outwards. Hitler wasn't making good decisions, and he was firing all the smart people on his staff, so then everyone just started taking back their land, and eventually Germany had to surrender.
A fascinating war, really. Fuck, I had something else to say.
Well, this is actually probably a decent time for us to... Oh, yeah?
Yeah, no, before this. Benedict Cumberbatch.
Oh, yeah.
Benedict Cumberbatch is going to be in a new movie called War Magicians, which is a terrible name, but it's based on a true story of an A team of magicians during World War II that actually helped the Allies to trick the enemy in many ways, like little cardboard tanks that they just walked around in to make planes miscalculate where their forces were. They used like trick mirrors and stuff to hide MG nests and stuff like that.
That is actually so right up Benedict's lane.
Yeah,
it's so perfect for him after Imitation Game.
I'm surprised nobody's done it yet. It's like they did things like they used illusions to completely throw off like whole fleets. Like it's just amazing. Like it's so cool that they were able to do that.
And I'm actually really excited to see that. Do you know when it's coming out?
No idea. I don't even think it has a director yet.
Wow.
So it's gonna be a while.
Yeah, quite a while.
Oh yeah.
All right, this was it, ladies and gentlemen.
This was significantly longer than our regular programming schedule.
Yes, this was longer. I hope you enjoyed the 40% bonus.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, never mind. That's a 66% bonus. So it's even better.
Oh.
Even way better.
All right.
Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, yes, we say that thing, don't we?
Yeah, no, we want to be kind to them. Nice, and make them come back and subscribe and shit. Thank you. Oh, wow, that was a sweet podcast, bro.